On November 11, 1978, a stunt driver pointed a 1969 Dodge Charger at a dirt ramp and floored it. The car climbed 16 feet into the air. It traveled 82 feet, and when it slammed back down to earth, it was finished. Frame bent, structure broken. One jump, one car gone. That wreck became the most replayed 8 seconds in television history. Every single week, for 7 years, audiences watched that exact car soar, never knowing it was already dead. This is the story of the General Lee, not the legend, the truth. A car that was loved by 20 million people a week and destroyed roughly 300 times to keep that love alive. Here's something the show never told you. The General Lee was never one car. It couldn't be. The 1969 Dodge Charger was built for speed, not for being launched off ramps and dropped back onto pavement, episode after episode. So every time you saw the General fly, you were watching a machine on a countdown timer. On average, the production destroyed more than one Charger per episode, over 7 seasons and 147 episodes. That adds up to a number most fans find hard to believe. This isn't a tribute video, it's an investigation into how a television studio quietly consumed hundreds of American muscle cars, why they eventually couldn't find any more, and how that desperation slowly killed the show itself. Stay with me, the ending is not what you'd expect. Start with origin. Series creator G.Y. Waldron first pictured a Pontiac Firebird in the role of the Duke Boys car. Think about that for a moment. The most famous Charger in the world almost wasn't a Charger at all. The man who overruled him was stunt coordinator Al Wyatt Sr. Wyatt had just finished running the stunt work on the 1974 film Dirty Mary, Crazy Larry, a movie that used 1969 Chargers, and he trusted what that car could survive. He knew its weight, its balance, how it behaved coming off a ramp. Cause and effect. One coordinator's prior film job is the entire reason the General Lee is a Charger and not a Firebird. A single professional opinion, and television history bends around it. The car's name didn't come from nowhere either. It traces back through a real-life bootlegger named Jerry Rushing, whose own car was called Traveler, named for Robert E. Lee's horse. That same name carried into Moonrunners, the 1975 film that was the direct ancestor of the Dukes of Hazzard. The General Lee, in other words, was built on a foundation of real Southern moonshine running history before a single frame was ever shot. The first cars were built in California and shipped across the country to Georgia, where the first 5 episodes were filmed in the towns of Covington and Conyers in November and December of 1978. Picture car coordinator John Merendi labeled the first 3 cars Lee 1, Lee 2, and Lee 3. And here's a detail most fans get wrong. In no particular order. The numbers were purely for film editing, not a ranking. Those early cars weren't identical either. Lee 1 started life painted light bronze metallic with a tan interior and chrome trim that the crew left on simply because it was hiding poor body repair underneath. The General Lee that audiences think of as one perfect, consistent machine was, from day one, a patchwork. But the detail that truly sells this chapter is the welded doors, because they were never planned. While filming the very first chase scene, a door handle was torn clean off when the car sideswiped a row of mailboxes. The door couldn't be opened from the outside anymore, so Tom Wopat simply climbed in through the open window, and the director loved it so much he made it a permanent feature of the show. From then on, the Duke Boys always came in through the windows. A piece of accidental mailbox damage became one of the most imitated moves in television history. The show was being shaped in real time by its own mistakes. This is where the trouble really started. Early jumps went wrong, badly wrong. The Charger carried most of its weight over the front wheels, so when it left the ramp, the nose dropped. The car would tip forward in the air and come down on its front bumper, crumpling on impact. The fix was brutally simple. Weight. The crew began packing 500 to 1,000 pounds of sandbags, or concrete ballast, into the trunk. That weight in the back kept the nose up and let the car land closer to level. But here's what the ballast couldn't fix: the violence of the landing itself. No amount of trunk weight changes the fact that a 2-ton car falling out of the sky hits the ground with enormous force. Watch any General Lee jump in slow motion, and you can see it. The body flexes, the chassis shudders, and on the hardest landings, the frame folds entirely. The General didn't bounce away clean. It was being destroyed in real time on camera every single week. The audience just never slowed the footage down to see it. And the danger was not only to the metal. In 1980, during the filming of a chase sequence, a camera truck flipped. One crew member was killed and 12 others were injured. The stunts that thrilled 20 million viewers a week were real, and so were the risks behind the camera. By the middle of the show's run, the production had a problem it could not script its way out of. They had wrecked so many 1969 Chargers that the cars themselves were becoming genuinely hard to find, and the ones that turned up were getting expensive. So the studio got aggressive. Scouts were sent combing through used car lots and parking lots across the region. And in the detail that fans always find hardest to believe, small aircraft were actually hired to fly over residential neighborhoods, looking down into driveways and backyards to spot 1969 Chargers from the air. The show had become a machine that consumed cars faster than the country could supply them. When genuine 1969 models ran short, the crew improvised. They took 1968 and 1970 Chargers and modified them to pass for 69s. Those sharp-eyed fans can still spot the difference in the headlights and tail panels. They even reworked AMC Ambassadors to stand in. Wrecked cars that still had life in them were patched up and jumped a second time. And in the most telling sign of desperation of all, some Chargers had their engines and transmissions pulled out completely and were simply towed up to speed or pushed off the ramp as empty shells, purely to get one more jump on film. The General Lee, by this point, was eating an entire generation of American muscle cars. Then came the twist that, in hindsight, marked the beginning of the end. Two pressures collided at once. The first was supply. The Chargers were simply running out, and the budget to chase them was running thin. The second was competition. In 1982, Knight Rider premiered, and with it came KITT, a sleek, talking, futuristic Trans Am. Suddenly, there was a very public argument over which show had television's greatest car. The studio's answer to both problems was the same: radio-controlled miniature models. Scale model Chargers could be jumped as high and as far as the producers wanted, with no real car destroyed and no stunt driver at risk. They used the miniatures more and more, especially for the biggest, most outrageous jumps, the ones meant to outdo Knight Rider. The directors hated it. Tom Wopat hated it. And the reason matters. The entire appeal of the General Lee was that it was real. Audiences believed in that car because they were watching an actual 2-ton machine actually leave the ground. The moment the jumps became obvious models, lightweight, weightless, bouncing wrong, that belief started to crack. You can feel it in the later seasons. The magic drains out, and by February of 1985, after 7 seasons and 147 episodes, the Dukes of Hazzard was over. So here's how the story resolves. When the show ended, only around 17 to 18 original General Lees still existed, survivors out of an estimated 300. They sat on the studio lot for years, going nowhere, before the studio finally began selling them off to private collectors. And then, the real reversal. In 2001, the very first General Lee, Lee 1, the car that made that record-breaking 82-foot jump in front of Cheney Hall, was discovered in a junkyard. It was bought, fully restored, and years later sold to professional golfer Bubba Watson for over $100,000. But Lee 1 is only one survivor's story, and the others took paths just as strange. Of the roughly 17 original cars that outlived the show, no two had quite the same fate. Some were stunt cars that had already been jumped, repaired, and jumped again, carrying bent frames and patched panels, like scars from a long career. Others were close-up beauty cars, the ones used for dialogue scenes, kept clean and undamaged because the camera lingered on them. And at least one was a car that, through a quirk of timing, was sold off before it was ever wrecked at all. That particular Charger had been bought by a Warner Brothers employee during the early Georgia filming, and because it left the production so soon, it slipped through a gap in the paperwork and survived completely intact, while hundreds of its siblings were crushed in junkyards. That's the thing collectors came to understand. There is no such thing as a standard General Lee. Each surviving car is a specific, documented machine with its own history. Which jump it performed, which season it appeared in, which scenes it sat in the background of. And that history is exactly what drives the value today. Consider the larger arithmetic for a moment. Roughly 300 Chargers went into this show. More than 200 of them were crushed for scrap, cut up for interior shots, or simply jumped until they could no longer roll. The 1969 Charger was never a rare car when production began. Dodge built tens of thousands of them, but the show consumed so many, and the muscle car collector market grew so quickly afterward, that the surviving generals became something their builders never imagined: irreplaceable. The very act of destroying hundreds of them is what made the handful that lived so valuable. Scarcity, created on purpose, one ramp at a time. So when you see an authenticated original General Lee today, you are not looking at a car, you are looking at a survivor, the rare exception to a rule the show wrote in wreckage. Think about the arc of that single car. In 1978, it was a used Charger, jumped once, wrecked, and written off as garbage. Today, it is a six-figure piece of American pop culture history. The car the show used up and threw away became the most valuable thing the show ever produced. The General Lee was a paradox, the most permanent icon in television history, built out of the most disposable cars on the lot. It was loved by 20 million people a week, precisely because it was real. And it was real because the studio was willing to destroy it, over and over, 300 times, just to keep that feeling alive. The legend and the wreckage were the same thing. You could not have one without the other. That's the part that stays with me. We remember the General Lee as one perfect, unkillable orange Charger sailing through the Georgia air. But it was never one car. It was hundreds of them, each one given a few seconds of glory and then sacrificed so the legend could roll on to the next episode. If this story changed the way you see that orange Charger, do me a favor, hit subscribe, because this channel is all about the true stories behind the cars that became stars. I'll see you in the next one.